The US-Israel war in Iran is almost in its third week and is only escalating with each passing day. The tensions are also spilling across the Gulf as the wave of retaliatory attacks from Iran are impacting the region's key economic hubs. Moreover, Iran's allegations of false flag activity have become a prominent feature of the discourse. In a dramatic escalation, Iranian authorities have urged residents to evacuate several major ports in the UAE, including facilities in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Fujairah. Iran's Joint Military Command says the US used ports, docks and hideouts there to launch strikes on Iran's Karg Island without providing evidence.
The invading US military, after its military bases in the region were destroyed, has fired missiles at the Iranian island of Abu Musa while taking shelter in ports, docks and hideouts within cities in the UAE. We declare to the leaders of the UAE that the Islamic Republic of Iran considers it its legitimate right, in defense of its national sovereignty and territory, to strike and hit the launch points of American enemy missiles located in shipping ports, docks, and the hideouts of US forces that are taking cover in some cities of the UAE.
All 6 GCC countries, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have faced retaliatory attacks or airspace violations by Iran and its allies. The attacks caused widespread disruption to aviation, including the temporary closure of airspace and damaged infrastructure in several Gulf nations. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that Tehran is ready to investigate the strikes on civilian areas in West Asian countries, while denying that they had struck any targets other than US bases and installations. In an interview with Al Arabi Al Jadid website, Araghchi blamed the US and Israel for the attacks. The warning from Iran's Joint Military Command has raised alarm across the Gulf region. These ports are not only critical to the UAE economy, but also play a central role in global trade and energy supply chains. Meanwhile, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, air defenses continued to intercept dozens of drones. Major US military installations remain Iran's primary targets in that region. In the early hours of Sunday, explosions rang out over Bahrain's capital of Manama. Bahrain said it intercepted 125 missiles and 203 drones since the start of Iran's attacks, which have killed 2 people in the kingdom. On Thursday, the Bahraini Ministry of the Interior released a footage showing smoke billowing from an oil tanker in Muharraq, near Bahrain International Airport. An Iranian strike sparked a major fire on Muharraq Island, home to the country's international airport. The airport has jet fuel tanks and other tanks in the area, which serve the kingdom's oil industry. While retaliatory strikes across the Gulf region have put everything on hold, Iran has repeatedly accused the US and Israel of conducting false flag operations. Iranian authorities, including foreign ministry officials and IRGC, have issued repeated warnings that Israel, possibly assisted by the US, may orchestrate attacks on energy infrastructure or other sensitive sites in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries and subsequently attribute them to Iran. Following escalated conflict between Iran and the US-Israeli forces, the Strait of Hormuz is experiencing a critical and near total closure, halting roughly 20% of global oil transit. GCC nations are also facing the impact, with oil exports paralyzed and vital supply chains severely disrupted. And as the war rages on, Iranian statements have consistently maintained that their operations are confined to military objectives linked to Israel and the US, with no strategic intent to target Arab states. Peter Kuznick is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. He's now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Professor Kuznick, it's good to see you and thank you very much for your time. What do you think will happen, or what do you think will be the repercussions, if at all, Iran doesn't stop attacking Gulf countries? Because they say they've been attacking and targeting military infrastructure, but now they blame Israel of attacking civilian infrastructure.
This is an asymmetrical war. And in an asymmetrical war, clearly the United States and Israel have the firepower to blow things up and destroy the infrastructure in Iran. And what we're seeing is entirely predictable. Iran is striking back in the ways that it can. And what Iran has are tens of thousands of drones and thousands of of ballistic missiles. So it's using the assets it has. And but the main asset it has is that these drones cost between $20,000 and $50,000 each. But the interceptors that the U.S. and Israel have cost upwards of $1 million each. And so the question is, who's going to run out first? Is Iran going to run out of the drones and the missiles, or are Israel and the U.S. and their allies in the region going to run out of interceptors? There are reports out that Israel has signaled that it's running very, very low of interceptors. I don't know if that's true or not. Nobody seems to have a handle on the numbers. The U.S. has been trying to destroy not only Iran's existing drones and missiles, but also its capacity to produce more. Iran can produce, or was able before the war started, to produce up to 10,000 more missiles a month. And so we don't know exactly where that stands now. Mm-hmm. But as an American, I've seen this movie before. I've seen the U.S. get lied into one war after another throughout my lifetime. And so this is, again, the same thing happening. And it's a very unpopular war in the United States. Usually at the start of a war, the public rallies around the flag and supports the administration. Mm-hmm. This one, since Trump's approval rating was so low before and his credibility was so low, that people did not respond that way to this. So Trump is on a short leash, although he doesn't seem to care much about American public opinion.
Professor Kuznick, and still talking about that, why do you think the U.S. president is keeping the world guessing as to when this war will end? And in your own view, who do you think will blink first, the United States or Israel?
The United States or Israel? Well, you know, Trump has not ever made clear or stuck to a consistent attempt to convince people of why this was anything other than a war of choice. Now, Rubio has said that the U.S. got involved because Israel was about to attack Iran itself, and then the U.S. assets throughout the region would be vulnerable. Trump comes up with one explanation after another: regime change, destroying Iran's nuclear program, which he said the U.S. had obliterated in June. So there's no clear explanation. And since there's no clear explanation, there's never been a game plan or a strategy for how to determine when the war was over. But the Iranians are striking back. And many American military analysts have said that the damage that Iran has done is much greater than is being publicly acknowledged. So whether Israel or the U.S. will blink first, Israeli public opinion is overwhelmingly in support of what Netanyahu is doing right now. American public opinion is not in support of what the U.S. is doing. So I would have to think the U.S. is going to blink first right now. The impact on America's allies or America's friends like India and other countries in Asia of the cutoff of oil is really having a much more serious impact, as well as the cutoff of gas and the cutoff of fertilizer and other goods from that region. Mm-hmm. So I think the U.S., given the fact that it's the number one oil producer, is not being affected as much as other countries are. But the U.S. is also being impacted at the gas pump, where gas has gone up more than 65 cents a gallon over the past couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's having a serious impact on Trump's own base.
Professor Kuznick, finally, there has been much talk about what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And yesterday, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, requested other nations, including China, to assist the ships or the vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz and to actually keep the strait open. What do you think, or what is your view on the president's statement and the president's plea?
The president is a typical schoolyard bully. If you stand up to him, he backs down, and then he wants others to do the fighting for him. If the U.S. wanted to do that, why doesn't it send its own Navy to clear the Strait of Hormuz? Because the U.S. knows that it will take casualties, that its naval ships will be vulnerable not only to the mines, but to the drones and the missiles. It will be attacked. And so the fact that Trump is doing that is just a sign of his own cowardice. This is a man who's known as, who got out of the Vietnam War that he supported because he had problems with his heels. This is a man who none of the Trumps have ever gone to war in the United States, even the wars that they support. Not Barron, not Donald, not Eric, not any of them. So this is not people who have shown any kind of courage on their own part. This is a cowardly regime that stands behind bombing after Iran has no more defense capabilities. So it's, but the danger is that given Trump's mentality, I'm very afraid, and many Americans are very afraid, that the U.S. could resort to using nuclear weapons, not because they're necessary, but precisely because they're not. Because Trump has broken every other norm, every tradition, every taboo, every international law, and the U.S. Constitution. The only taboo that Trump has not broken so far is the nuclear taboo. I don't know that he's going to do that. I sure hope he doesn't, because we're going to have a world in much greater chaos and destruction than we have now. But he's already established the principle that if you don't have nuclear weapons, the U.S. can and maybe will invade you, seize your leaders, kill your leaders, and blow up your infrastructure. So that's a horrible message to send to the world that might make right, that brute force prevails, and the U.S. can do anything it wants, wherever it wants. This is a much more dangerous world, a much more lawless world than existed before Trump got into office.
Right.
So I'm worried. I'm not happy about the situation at all, and we need diplomacy to end this immediately.
Professor Peter Kuznick, we'll have to end this discussion there. Thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.